Snowflakes drifted against the frosted glass windows of a quiet suburban home in upstate New York. Inside, the kitchen smelled faintly of rosemary and roasted chicken, though the food sat untouched on the table. At the head of the long oak dining table sat Margaret Hayes, Maggie, to her friends, Mom, to her daughter. She was in her late 50s now, her once dark hair streaked with silver, her face lined with the delicate etchings of both laughter and sorrow. She wore a wool cardigan despite the heater humming in the background. The table was set for two. Plates, silverware polished, glasses half filled with water. And yet, across from her, just opposite where she sat, remained an empty chair. Maggie sat there in silence, eyes fixed on the chair, her hands folded neatly in her lap. It had become a ritual. Every night at 7, dinner served, places set, one occupied, one empty. Her daughter, Claire, 21 years old and back home from college for winter break, leaned against the doorway, watching. "Mom," Claire said softly, "you do this every night." Maggie didn't turn. She blinked slowly, as if Claire's voice had reached her from a faraway place. "Dinner's ready," she said, her tone quiet but oddly formal. Claire walked closer, her boots clicking against the hardwood. "But, no one's coming." She gestured toward the empty chair. Maggie finally looked at her, and her eyes carried a faraway glaze that unsettled Claire. "You never know who might show up." Claire's unease. Claire had noticed it from the moment she returned home for break. The table was always set for two, but her father wasn't there. He hadn't been there for years. He had passed when Claire was 16, sudden heart attack, no warning, no goodbye. At first, she thought her mother's ritual was an act of grief, a harmless way of holding on. But now, 5 years later, it unsettled her. It wasn't just that her mother set the table. It was the way she sat there, staring at the empty chair as if expecting it to speak back. That night, as Maggie nibbled half-heartedly at her chicken, Claire picked at her food, her appetite gone. "Mom," she said carefully, do you think Dad's still here? Is that what this is about?" Maggie's fork froze halfway to her mouth. A shadow crossed her face. "Don't," she whispered. "Not tonight. Not tonight. Mom, it's every night. You sit here and talk to an empty chair like you're waiting for him." Maggie's lips tightened. "It's not your place to understand." Claire swallowed the sting of those words, pushing her chair back. "You're right," she said quietly, standing. "I don't understand." She left the table, leaving her mother alone with the chair. Flashback, the family table. That night, as Claire lay awake in her childhood bedroom, she remembered the dinners of her childhood. Her father, James, would sit at that same chair, head of the table, voice booming with laughter after a long day at the law office. He'd tease Claire about her messy handwriting, brag about Maggie's cooking, and sometimes launch into debates about politics that made Maggie roll her eyes. Dinner had always been sacred. No phones, no TV, no excuses. Just the three of them around the table, holding hands before the meal. And then, in an instant, it was gone. Claire remembered that night 5 years ago. She remembered Maggie's trembling voice on the phone, the ambulance lights flashing red against the house, the way her father's chair sat empty for the first time. She had begged her mom to throw it out, to replace it with something else, anything else. But Maggie refused. "It stays," she had said firmly. "It belongs." Claire never realized how deep her mother's ritual would grow. The following morning, the next day, Claire entered the kitchen to find her mother. Humming softly, her hands busy polishing silverware. "You're setting the table already?" Claire asked. "It's important to keep things ready," Maggie replied without looking up. "Ready for who?" Maggie finally met her daughter's eyes. "For us." But when dinner came again, there were still only 2 plates. 2 glasses. And only one of them used. That night, Claire decided to push harder. "Mom," she said, her tone firmer, "you can't keep doing this. Dad isn't coming back." Maggie's face snapped toward her, sharp as a knife. "Don't you dare say that in this house." The silence that followed was suffocating. Claire wanted to shout back, to shake her mother and force her to see reason. But something in Maggie's trembling hand stopped her. This wasn't stubbornness. It was something deeper. Something broken. The discovery. The next afternoon, while her mother was out running errands, Claire wandered into the dining room. The table sat neatly set once again, plates gleaming under the chandelier light. She moved closer to the empty chair. She traced her fingers along the backrest. The wood was worn, faded where her father's hand had rested over the years. As she leaned closer, she noticed something, tiny scratches carved into the underside of the table. She bent down, squinting. They were initials. J plus M. Her parents' initials, carved deep into the wood, almost invisible unless you looked closely. Her throat tightened. No wonder her mother refused to let go of the chair. But when she pulled out the chair to sit, she noticed something else, a folded piece of paper, tucked neatly under the seat cushion. Curious, she slid it out. It was a letter. Her hands shook as she opened it. The handwriting was her father's. My dearest Maggie, if you're reading this, it means I didn't make it home that night. I'm sorry. I wanted to tell you so much more, to hold you for so much longer. Please don't let the table go empty. Promise me you'll always keep a place for me, because as long as you do, I'll still be here with you. Love always, James. Claire's breath caught. Her vision blurred with tears. The chair wasn't just grief. It was a promise. Confrontation. That night, Claire sat across from her mother at dinner, the letter burning in her pocket. I found something, she began softly. Maggie froze, fork in midair. What did you find? Claire slid the letter across the table. Maggie's hand trembled as she unfolded it. Her lips parted as she read, her face crumbling with emotion. I didn't know, Claire whispered. I didn't know he asked you to do this. Maggie's tears fell freely now, splashing against the letter. He wanted me to keep him here. With us. I wasn't crazy, Claire. I wasn't just clinging to nothing. Claire's chest ached. Mom, you don't have to prove that to me. I just don't want you stuck in the past. I don't want you to live in this house like time stopped. Maggie reached across the table, gripping Claire's hand. Her touch was firm, almost desperate. You don't understand, she said through tears. The chair isn't just for him. Claire frowned. What do you mean? Maggie looked at her with haunted eyes. It's for you too. The words hung in the air like ice water. Claire pulled her hand back slowly, confusion rising in her chest. For me? Maggie didn't answer. She simply stared at the empty chair, her lips trembling as though fighting to keep something unsaid. Claire followed her gaze, her heart pounding. That night, as she lay awake, the image of the empty chair burned in her mind. For her mother, for her father, and now, for her. She didn't understand, but she would. And when she finally uncovered the truth, it would shake everything she thought she knew about her family. Lily's heart was pounding as she stood in the kitchen doorway, her eyes fixed on her mother, Emily. The room smelled faintly of rosemary and roasted chicken, but the meal sat untouched on the table. The empty chair, the one across from Emily, seemed larger than life tonight. Emily's gaze was locked on that chair, tears shimmering in her eyes, though she tried to blink them away. Lily wanted to speak, to ask, to demand an answer, but the words caught in her throat. For years she had tiptoed around her mother's grief, fearing what lay hidden beneath it. But tonight was different. Tonight, she needed to know. Mom, Lily whispered, her voice trembling. Who are you waiting for? Emily's hand froze on the glass of water she had been lifting. Slowly, she set it down, her knuckles white, her chest rising and falling with uneven breaths. For a long moment, silence thickened the air, only broken by the tick of the clock on the wall. Finally, Emily spoke, her voice fragile yet steady. For your father, she said. Lily's eyes widened. But, he left us years ago. You said he wasn't coming back. Emily swallowed hard, her gaze still fixed on the chair. Yes, he left. But I never stopped hoping he'd walk back through that door. Every night, I set the table for him, as if he might remember us, remember me, and come home. Lily's heart ached. All the anger she had felt toward her absent father resurfaced, the birthdays he had missed, the graduations, the times she had cried herself to sleep wondering why he had chosen to stay away. And now, seeing her mother's devotion, it felt like betrayal. Mom, Lily said, her voice cracking, he doesn't deserve this. He doesn't deserve you. Emily turned to her daughter for the first time that night, her eyes red but resolute. Maybe not. But love isn't about deserving. It's about holding on, even when everything tells you to let go. The return. Weeks passed, and Emily continued her ritual, though Lily tried to break her of it. Sometimes Lily would remove the extra plate, or push the chair aside, but Emily always restored it, as if it were sacred. Then, One rainy evening, when thunder rattled the windows and the lights flickered, a knock came at the door. Emily's heart skipped. She stood frozen, her hands trembling as Lily went to open it. On the doorstep stood a man, drenched in rain, his face weary, his eyes shadowed with years of regret. "David," Emily whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. Lily froze. She hadn't seen her father in over a decade. His hair was flecked with gray now, his shoulders stooped, but those eyes, the same deep brown she saw in her own reflection, were unmistakable. "Emily," Lily, David's voice cracked. "I don't even know if I have the right to be here. But I had nowhere else to go." The silence was deafening. Rain poured behind him, and the smell of wet earth filled the room. Emily's chest rose and fell as she struggled with a storm of emotions. Lily, however, felt nothing but rage. "You think you can just show up here? After all these years?" she snapped, her fists clenched. "You broke her. You broke us." David lowered his head. "I know. And I can't undo what I've done. But I want to try, if you'll let me." The struggle. Dinner that night was the most awkward meal they had ever shared. David sat in the very chair Emily had kept empty for years. Lily's stomach churned as she watched her mother's eyes flicker between him and her plate. "Why now?" Lily demanded. "Why come back after everything?" David sighed, rubbing his temples. "I was a coward. I thought I'd find happiness somewhere else, but all I found was emptiness. Every night I thought about this chair, about the family I abandoned. When I heard Emily was still here, I had to try, even if it's too late." Lily's chest burned with anger. "It is too late. You don't get to walk in and act like we can just go back." But Emily reached across the table, her hand covering Lily's. Her touch was gentle, but her words carried weight. "Sometimes forgiveness isn't about them, Lily. It's about us, about freeing ourselves from the chains of anger." Tears welled in Lily's eyes. She wanted to fight, to scream, to throw him out. But a small part of her longed for the father she had lost. Healing slowly. The weeks that followed were filled with tension. David tried, cooking breakfast, fixing the broken fence, leaving little notes of apology for Lily. Some days, she tore them up without reading. Other days, she read them in secret, her hands shaking. One afternoon, Lily found her mother and father in the living room, laughing softly over an old photo album. For a moment, they looked like the family they once had. But then the memory of years of pain hit her, and she stormed out. David followed her to the porch. "Lily, I know I hurt you. I don't expect you to forgive me overnight. But please, let me earn it." Her voice cracked. "Do you even know what it was like growing up without you? Watching Mom cry herself to sleep. Watching her wait for you night after night." David's eyes glistened. "I know I can't erase that. But I want to be here now. For both of you. The empty chair no more." Months passed. Slowly, painfully, the cracks began to mend. Lily allowed small conversations with David, then shared a meal, then a memory. Emily watched with quiet hope, her heart swelling as the family she had prayed for began to stitch itself back together. One evening, Emily set the table as she always did. But this time, as David came in from the yard, she placed her hand on the chair. "For years this chair was empty," she said softly. "But tonight, it's not." David sat, tears spilling down his face. Lily, still hesitant, took her place beside them. For the first time in years, the table felt whole. The empty chair was no longer a symbol of loss, but of redemption. Epilogue. Years later, Lily would look back on that time not as the years she lost her father, but as the moment her family found its way back together. Forgiveness had not come easily. It had come through tears, through fights, through endless nights of doubt. But it had come, and every time she sat at that table, she remembered that love was not about perfection, it was about choosing each other, even after the hardest of storms.